Good morning, everyone. So, we are dealing with the concepts of variables affecting the fluorescence phenomena and phosphorescence phenomena. So far, we have seen quantum yield, we have seen solvent effect, effect of structure, structural rigidity, temperature, so on and so forth. So, the next concept in the same variables would be effect of pH. So, what is the effect of this pH on the system? As the pH changes, it affects the charge on the chromophore. Now, what is a chromophore here? Chromophore is something which is going to give us the fluorescence phenomena or the phosphorescence phenomena. Chromophore can be anything like that of a functional group. Like that, it can be an OH group, it can be an OCH3 group, it can be NH2 group, so on and so forth. Now, if we take up an example of phenol and anisole, we have seen that the fluorescence of aromatic compounds with basic or acidic substituent rings are usually pH dependent. The wavelength and emission intensity is different for protonated and unprotonated forms of the compound. The emission changes of this compound arises from the different number of resonating structures associated with acidic and basic forms of the molecule. The additional resonance forms provides a more stable first excited state, thus leading to fluorescence in the ultraviolet region. So what we can understand with this particular statement is that if there are more number of resonating structures in an aromatic compound, they will fluoresce. Now let us look at the example of phenol and anisole. At pH 7, both of these systems fluoresce. Now at pH system at 7, meaning it's a neutral system. But once I just try to put these molecules in a basic phenomena, that is, I try to put this molecule at pH 12, that means we try to add a base to this particular system, then what happens for a phenolic system is this proton gets abstracted. Once the proton gets abstracted, it will give me a phenolate ion. From a fluorescing molecule, it has turned itself into a non-fluorescent molecule. This is the influence of a basic phenomena or a basic pH on phenol. But what happens to anisole? It remains unaffected because it is a neutral molecule, and the neutral molecule do not get affected by the addition of either acid or base. Now the same concept, let us look for aniline. Now with aniline system, it is an NH2 system. It is going to have a lone pair of electron like this. Now there is a presence of lone pair of electrons. At pH 7, it is again going to fluoresce. That means fluorescence phenomena is seen. But the moment I put this aniline at pH 2, that means I am adding an acidic medium to this particular system, this aniline gets turned into an anilinium ion system. In turn, it loses its lone pair of electrons. Now, if it loses its lone pair of electrons, then it turns itself into a non-fluorescent molecule. Now, how can I explain this? The explanation is very simple. That is, if there is a presence of lone pair of electrons, they will be in conjugation with the benzene ring. In turn, they will give me lot of resonating structure. Increase in the number of resonating structure increases the fluorescing capacity of the molecule. Once I lose this lone pair of electrons to an acid, then there is a proton, there is a kind of a system with a positive charge where there is a loss of a lone pair of electrons. Then obviously I will be losing many number of resonating structures. Once we lose many number of resonating structures, that means the fluorescing capacity of the molecule also decreases. Now the obvious question may be, there is a negative charge on phenol and phenolate ion, and why it is not fluorescing? It is fluorescing, but the capacity of the fluorescence actually decreases because there will be less number of resonating structures with the phenolate ion. So where can we use this particular system? That means where can we use this kind of pH systems in types of understanding or applicating this effect of pH. Now, fluorescence of certain compounds have been used for a detection of endpoints in acid-base titration. Now, for an example for this is this particular compound, which is 1-naphthol 4-sulfonic acid, which is in its phenolic form. Look at this form, it's in the phenolic form. Now, once we add base to it, this proton gets abstracted. Now, this gets converted to a phenolate form. That means what I have done is, from an acidic form, I have converted into its basic form, or it can be said that it has formed its salt form, that is a phenolate form, by the addition of base. This particular 1-naphthol 4-sulfonic acid, which was not fluorescent, the moment we have added base to it, there is increase in the number of resonating structures, and in turn this particular fluorescing phenomena now gets shifted from a UV region to a visible region, giving me a system of end point to that particular acid base titration. So such kind of phenomena can be used in acid base titrations, and these compounds can be used as the indicators for acid base titrations. So the next concept in this particular pH phenomena would be, now look at this particular compound. That means it is 1-naphthol sulfonic acid. This fluoresces in a UV region, but it is undetectable. That means we cannot see any kind of detection. But the moment I just convert this into its phenolate ion, that means because there is a presence of a SO3H, this will increase the number of resonating structures. That means we have abstracted this particular proton using a base, and I have converted into its respective phenolate form. This phenolate form in the basic solution emits peaks and shifts to a visible region, and these are detectable. Why these get detectable is because there are many number of resonating structures because of the presence of this sulfonic acid. How can we write a sulfonic acid species? This is how we write a sulfonic acid species. Can we not show a lot of resonating structures on this sulfonic acid species? Definitely. Once we can get n number of resonating structures, obviously we can get lot of fluorescence activity. Fluorescent indicators are very sensitive to pH, and they can be used in turbid or intensely colored systems also, because they are just being used as a pH dependent systems, and hence they can be used in a lots of systems. So this is the effect of pH. The effect of pH is seen in both acidic medium and basic medium. At neutral systems, at pH 7, most of the molecules may fluoresce, but once the base is added or an acid is added, there may be change in the pH, and this change in the pH affects the fluorescence phenomena. The next concept in the variables affecting the luminescence phenomena or phosphorescence phenomena or fluorescence phenomena is effect of dissolved oxygen. Now what happens is, oxygen is a paramagnetic species, we can understand that. This presence of oxygen, it reduces emission intensity of a fluorescent solution due to photochemically induced oxidation state of the fluorescent species. Now what happens here is, though the species may be fluorescent, but here due to the presence of oxygen, what is the meaning of presence of oxygen? That means we are trying to introduce an oxidation state. This is also true because there is a paramagnetic nature for the molecular oxygen. Now this paramagnetic nature of the molecular oxygen, rather than fluorescing, it will now promote itself to an intersystem crossing, and this converts the molecule to an excited state, resulting into quenching of the fluorescence. Now the fluorescence phenomena may not be observed because of the presence of oxygen, because oxygen helps into more intersystem crossing. That is, either it can go to a triplet state and it might give phosphorescence, but what will happen is, rather than staying at a singlet state, it gets converted to a triplet state. From the triplet state, whether it will give phosphorescence phenomena is dependent on the type of the solvent that we are using or the type of the molecule that we are trying to record our readings. Now for example, anthracene. At a regular species, when there is a presence of an anthracene, this is the structure of anthracene. But once an oxygen is added to this particular anthracene, what happens is this double bond. Now conjugated double bonds, they get affected with the presence of this molecular oxygen. Now it will try to oxidize the double bond. This oxidizing of the double bond with the presence of the molecular oxygen affects the fluorescing capacity of the molecule. The previously fluorescent molecule may lose its fluorescence because of the intersystem crossing. What is the meaning of intersystem crossing? From a singlet state, it gets converted to a triplet state. From a triplet state, whether it is going to give me a phosphorescence phenomena is a complete different story, which is dependent on the solvents and dependent on the molecule that we are trying to record the system. Now the next concept is effect of concentration. Now first of all, when we try to learn the U-visible spectroscopy, we always try to learn about the Beer-Lambert's law. Based on the Beer-Lambert's law only, what we say is whatever is the absorption, it is dependent on the concentration. Now Beer-Lambert's law also says that only on the dilute solution this U-visible spectroscopy may work. On the same phenomena, fluorescence is directly proportional to concentration. That is, to small values of fluorescence, hence lower concentration of the samples is working. That means we cannot have a high concentrated samples. Thus, it is true about 0.05% of the sample and 5% of extinction. That means we need to have a very weak solution. Now look at this system. We try to understand that this is a weak solution and there is a strong solution. In the weak solution, look at the number of exciting lights. That means they get excited. Number of exciting lights are more, then obviously number of emission lights also will be more. If look at the strong solution, if I have making use of a strong solution, then the excitation light is very less. Look at here, that is the excited molecules are less. If the excited molecules are less, then obviously the emitted molecule, the emission of the molecules from your higher state to a ground state will also be less. So in this way, here we are trying to apply the Beer-Lambert's law only. That is, lower the concentration of the solution and the sample, higher is the fluorescence capacity. The absorbing of the exciting radiation in this way or by a non-fluorescent absorbing solute is an example of an inner filter effects which distorts both excitation and emission spectrum. The meaning of this particular system is, if I make use of a weaker concentration, that means a lesser concentration, then I can get enough amount of excited molecules and I can get an enough amount of emitted molecules or the emitted radiations, excited radiations as well as emitted radiation. But the moment I go on increasing the concentration, this will lead me inner filter effects. The meaning of inner filter effects is there will be less number of excited molecules. In turn, there will be very less number of emitted radiations in the molecule. In turn, the fluorescing capacity decreases. Now this is true if there is a self-absorption of the fluorescence by the solution. This may be caused by too high concentration of the solute or by any non-fluorescent absorbing solute or impurity that may be present. Now this particular statement speaks about if there is a very high concentration of the solute present. So what will happen is, in this way there will be number of collision increases. If the number of collisions increases, then obviously we can say that there will be self-absorption. If there is a self-absorption, then the fluorescing capacity decreases. Now for any molecule to give us a fluorescence, we have to see that it is a very pure molecule. That means there will be very less amount of impurity. The impurity, if it is present, then it is going to affect our fluorescence spectroscopy. What is the meaning? Less impurity, it does not interfere in the fluorescence capacity. But the moment there is an high impurity, the excitation light may be absorbed by the impurity itself and nothing is left for the emission, and the fluorescence gets extinguished. That means for a fluorescence spectroscopy, the compound used should be highly pure compound. If there is even a slight presence of an impurity, we can say that the fluorescence capacity gets affected. If the concentration of the fluorescent substance is very high, that all the incident radiation is then given by F is equal to I naught Q. Q is the constant and I naught is the intensity of the incident radiation. Now what we can understand from this, if we have a very high impurity or a very high concentrated solution, then the fluorescence phenomena is generally quenched off. That means it is completely extinguished because of the self-absorption. Either if it is a presence of an impurity, again the fluorescence phenomena is lost because the impurity might absorb all the emitted radiation. Now this is about the variables affecting the fluorescence phenomena and in turn phosphorescence phenomena. So we have seen various variables affecting. The next concept that we need to see is excitation spectra versus the emission spectra. Let us look at this particular molecule. It is called as phenanthrene molecule. Now how do we get a spectra? There is a relative intensity versus the wavelength. Now let us understand that when this phenanthrene is shined with the light of UV visible light, there is an absorption phenomena. Look at the wavelength of the absorption phenomena. It is between 200 to 300. That means it is between the UV visible region. But look at this molecule is definitely going to fluoresce because of the presence of the conjugation in the system. That means many number of resonating structures. Now the structure is also rigid structure, so obviously the structural rigidity also plays a role. Now in turn, when it is fluorescing, look at the wavelength, it is between 400 to 500. Now the same phenomena, the same compound, if it undergoes an intersystem crossing from a singlet state to a triplet state, if it is going to give me a phosphorescence, look at the wavelength of the phosphorescence, it is 600 nanometer. So from this graph we can understand that fluorescence and phosphorescence, they occur at a longer wavelength compared to that of your absorption spectroscopy. So fluorescence spectroscopy and phosphorescence spectroscopy, they always occur at a higher wavelength compared to that of your absorption spectroscopy. It also means that absorption spectroscopy versus the emission spectroscopy means the emission spectra will always have a higher wavelength. If there is a higher wavelength, that means it is going to have a lower energy. In turn, the excited spectrum is at a lower wavelength, whereas the emission spectrum is at a higher wavelength. This is the meaning of excitation spectra versus emission spectra. So that is what is given in these particular statements. Fluorescence and phosphorescence occurs at wavelengths that are longer than their absorption wavelengths. Phosphorescence bands are found at a longer wavelength than fluorescence band because the excited triplet state is lower in energy than the singlet state. That is due to what? It is due to intersystem crossing, where a singlet state is getting converted to a triplet state. Now it will stay for a longer time in a triplet state and hence it is still going to go to a longer wavelength. The difference in wavelength could also be used to measure the energy difference between the singlet and triplet state of the molecule. How we can measure the energy difference between a singlet and the triplet state is because we can understand E is equal to hc by lambda. Using this particular equation, we can understand the energy difference between an singlet state and the triplet state. The next concept is called as sensitivity and selectivity. The meaning of sensitivity and selectivity means we try to understand how much is the instrument sensitive for these particular recording phenomena, under which when we speak about sensitivity, at to what concentration is the instrument sensitive. Selectivity meaning what kind of molecules can actually fluoresce. This is what we can see. First one, let us understand instrumental sensitivity. It defines signal to noise ratio at a particular set of conditions. The minimum detectable quantity of a particular compound at a particular set of conditions. Now that means that if there is some signal given by the molecule, the signal to noise ratio should be very less for the instrument. In this way we can say that the instrument is having a very high sensitivity. If we get a lot of noise, that means the sensitivity of the instrument is very less. Now how much less concentration can I make use? Can I just make use of 0.1 gram, 0.2 gram and then dissolve it in a solvent, and whether I can do a fluorescence spectra? This also is determined by the instrumental sensitivity. Now in how much less quantity can I do a fluorescent complete experiment is again dependent on the instrumental sensitivity. This is based on the instrument system. Now the next is called as method sensitivity. It is limit of detection. It is defined as in trace analysis as that concentration in which yields an instrument response to standard deviation above the background signal. That means this is a method. We always try to compare two type of concentration or two types of deviation. What is the meaning of deviation? Say one I have taken like 0.102 gram and the other one I have taken 0.103 gram. Can we see there is a very less difference, but can this be detected in the method sensitivity? That means the instrument should respond for both 0.102 gram and 0.103 gram. So this is called as a method sensitivity. That means how much limit can be detected, whether this small limit can be detected with two standard deviation at a given set of the background. So for example, if I have taken a substance at 0.102 gram and 0.103 gram, it's a very less difference. If this can be detected in the instrument, then this kind of sensitivity is called as method sensitivity. The next concept is called as absolute sensitivity. It is expressed in the terms of spectral properties of the material. Example, quantum yield, extinction coefficient, and it is dependent on the instrument. Now absolute sensitivity is dependent on phi, that is the quantum yield. We already know what is the quantum yield. For a proper fluorescing molecule, phi should approach 1, that is called as quantum yield, and when phi approaches 1, then we say that this particular molecule is having a highest fluorescing capacity. Now this is called as absolute sensitivity. It is dependent on what? It is dependent on the quantum yield, and in turn it is dependent on the extinction coefficient. But this is independent of the instrument. So what is it is dependent on? It is dependent on the compound or the material that we are trying to analyze over there. It is never ever dependent on the instrument that we are trying to use. Our molecule should have a highest fluorescing capacity. In turn, phi should approach 1. When phi is almost approaching 1, then it is almost reaching an absolute sensitivity. The next concept is called as selectivity. Fluorescence and phosphorescence. Selectivity is superior to absorption spectrophotometry. Obviously, when I say an absorption photometry, I am speaking about U visible spectroscopy. But in the fluorescence phenomena, not all the compounds are fluorescent, not all the compounds are phosphorescent. We already know that very few molecules are fluorescent with lots of conditions. Very few molecules are phosphorescent with lots of conditions. This is because the selectivity between analyte and an Interferent is possible if there is a difference in their excitation and emission spectra. That means excitation spectra can be seen by most of the molecules, whereas emission spectra is seen by very less number of molecules. So how can we calculate this? Total emission intensity is equal to linear sum of fluorescent / phosphorescent species. It is called as total emission intensities. How many number of molecules are going from the ground state to an excited state, and how many of them are returning back with an emission spectra to give me a fluorescence or phosphorescence phenomena. Now for example, if a sample contains n components, therefore can be accomplished by measuring the total emission intensity at n wavelengths. That means I can go on changing the wavelengths and I can understand whether this particular compound is fluorescent or no. If there is a mixture of compounds, few compounds may be fluorescent and few compounds may just give us radiationless deactivation. Few compounds may give radiation deactivation phenomena which will lead to fluorescent and phosphorescent phenomena. We have already seen the temperature effect, that is increased temperature and increased frequency of the collision. That is, the moment there is an increase in the temperature, there will be increased frequency of collision at higher temperature. This enhances the probability of deactivation by external conversion. What is the meaning of external conversion? Two molecules may collide with each other and in turn they may lose their fluorescing capacity. Lastly, there is a phenomena called as quenching phenomena. Basically, what is the meaning of quenching is reducing, that is reducing the fluorescing capacity. Now let us see. It is the reduction in the intensity of fluorescence and phosphorescence due to specific constituents of the solution itself. This is called as inner filter effect. We have already seen what is an inner filter effect. That is, higher concentration of the solute system will lead to an inner filter effect. That means lower concentration has to be used if the molecule has to fluoresce or phosphorase. If I am making use of a stronger solution or an higher concentrated solution, that means I am going to lead it to an effect called as quenching. That means there is a reduction in the intensity, emission intensity. This is also true when I am trying to have a paramagnetic activity of oxygen. What does oxygen lead to? Oxygen leads to a paramagnetic activity. In turn, it leads to intersystem crossing. But the intersystem crossing may not lead to phosphorescent phenomena. Rather, it might lead to a system where the intersystem crossing takes place, but it gives me a radiational-less transition. Again, there is a loss of fluorescence and phosphorescence phenomena. What are the other causes for quenching? It is caused by other molecules. That is, there may be presence of impurities which might cause quenching. That is, reducing the fluorescence and phosphorescence phenomena. There may be concentration quenching. Already I have told you the inner filter effect. That is, lower concentration will always give good fluorescing capacity and phosphorescing capacity. There may be a chemical quenching. The meaning of chemical quenching is if we have added an oxidation species like oxygen, if we have adding a reducing species, if we have added any kind of base or acid to the system. For example, we have seen in the pH system, there may be a quenching because of the presence of some amount of chemical that we have added or the environment that we have changed. There may be a phenomena called as self-quenching. The meaning of self-quenching is the molecules might start colliding with each other and in turn they may lose energy, and this might lead to radiational-less transitional. Lastly, there may be collisional impurity quenching. That means whatever the molecules which might be giving some emission radiation, they might collide with the impurities and in turn there may be this energy may be transferred to the impurity and the fluorescing capacity might decrease. So what is the meaning of caused by other molecules? Now for example, if there is a presence of benzoic acid. How is benzoic acid formed? It is due to the oxidation of the benzaldehyde. Now let us take an example of benzaldehyde. and after the oxidation it is going to give me a benzoic acid. This is what is the benzaldehyde species to a benzoic acid. If I am trying to record for the benzoic acid and if there is a presence of a benzaldehyde in the particular solvent system, then it may lead to quenching of the molecule that I am trying to record. In this way, quenching phenomena is one of the reduction phenomena and it is going to affect the fluorescence and phosphorescent capacity of the molecules. Thank you.